Please rise.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The meeting is recorded by Scott Steelson, and we also have availability of new people to call in. And, okay. I don't see any announcements on the page, so let's go to our open forum. So this would be for any items on the agenda tonight. So I'll turn to this side of the room. Any questions on our agenda for tonight?
Are you going to be talking about the saldo amendment on the agenda?
It wasn't included, but I think we need to follow up on that since it's coming up next week.
Can we make comments tonight on that or next week?
I think we can entertain it. We did have the several of our workshop meetings in the past to discuss it. And what I can do is, after we've had the open forum for the 3-minute sessions, and everyone's satisfied, then if we want to give some comments, which may take more than 3 minutes. So if that's acceptable to the board. Yes.
Yeah, I thought we were just talking about the budget.
We have the budget, and what we didn't include on this as well, the items that were called out in the town hall meeting.
Right.
So that was also missing on this agenda. So we can keep to our agenda, and then we provide additional time for further questions.
Questions that have to be down for the record.
To the township, yes. All right, I think that's acceptable. Let's turn to the side of the room. Questions, comments for tonight's agenda? All right. Let's move ahead. So just a reminder for the open forum session for now and later that we keep to a 3-minute rule, but as I said, we'll adjust later after that session for discussion on the saldo modification or amendment. Let's look at the first item of business, the budget discussion. So, Warren, would you want to start that discussion?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The purpose of our budget discussion, September is just the first month where we do a high-level look at just a few things. Where we're at, where we believe we're going to land at the end of the year, what we're interested in doing, and what's important to the board for capital projects and items further down the road. So all the board members have a working copy here. This evening, I'm just going to go a high level over just the general fund. Just as a reminder, the general fund is generally where we receive funds and where we expend most of our tax funds out of the year. We do have other funds that are funded either by the general fund or our reserve funds, such as land preservation and liquid fuels, which we're not going to cover tonight. Understand that when we come back next month for our workshop, based upon the feedback that I will get from the board over the next handful of weeks, Paul Jansen and I will present you what we believe is the starting point for 2024's budget. We'll display that up on Zoom. All of the board members can take a look at that, and that will be the full budget through all of our funds. And at that point, we will kind of explain the larger projects that we're hoping to accomplish next year. So currently, just going over our revenue funds, again, high level, I can answer any specific questions. If it's a detailed conversation after the meeting or if it's involved any of the supervisors or an in-person meeting. Our real estate taxes look like we're going to be spot on along with our delinquent tax. Our earned income tax, we believe we're probably going to be $100,000 above what our expectations are, landing at about $1.3 million. We had budgeted 1.2. The license and permits, we're going to be pretty much on par. We might be up a couple $1,000. Fines and forfeits are holding strong. You'll note at 341 on our first page at the bottom, we had budgeted $70,000 for interest earnings into the general fund, and we are expecting to do at least $110,000 with our term investments. And again, this is just the general fund and not any other associated funds. Our state revenues are a little bit low than what we believed. Our recycling grant is coming way out there. I'm going to work with the treasurer. That's under 354,150 on the second page. We had budgeted $11,000. For some reason, we're projecting $1,500. So I'm going to work with the treasurer to see if payments are just coming in late or if they're just going to be off due to a lack of recycling getting processed through the township. Charges for service, we're a little bit down. Engineering and legal fees reimbursable, and that this could be because we have less projects coming in, so we would receive less money from reimbursables. Building permits are up by $20,000. Electrical permits are up by $3,000. Zoning general permits are also over expectations by $2,000. And again, this is just where we're going to approximate where we land, and I'm talking about page 3 at this point. Our municipal solid waste fees for being a host of a landfill, we budgeted $200,000. We think we're going to be over by about $7,000. You'll notice in culture and recreation fees, last year we did not budget that line item. Had been for charges for our summer program. We had our employee, contracted employee, no longer wish to conduct those services, and after having Park and Rec and us kind of make some inquiries out, we had no takers who were interested in developing the program. So at this point, unless we have something that change, we'll try not to be moving forward with the summer program. But again, if anybody knows of someone willing to put one on, host it, we'd be more than willing to try to look at restarting that process again. Item rentals are on par. 387,000, the fee in lieu, that's the tax exempt status from Telhai. That was agreed upon through some of the master plans going back many years. So as you'll note at the bottom of this last page that we're currently on, we anticipated our revenue being about $2.261 million, and we believe we're going to be at about 2.4. So we're going to be up about $200,000 in revenue. Moving over to expenses, we're a little bit higher, halfway down in administrative payroll, because our staff has been working more hours to complete the multitude of problems and issues that are coming through the township currently. We are working on getting our website online, and that should be occurring in the next handful of weeks. Some of the projects are a little bit slower. The digitizing of our records is a little bit far behind, and that was due to be completed in the third quarter this year. That might be pushed off next year, so some of the funds might be going out forward that we will pay out this year. There is a significant spike in 405,195 down under administration. It looks like our workman's comp has doubled. There is no explanation I can give the board at this time, except I'm going to work with the treasurer to see if insurance rates up. We haven't changed our full-time staffing over this year, so I'll see if that's just an anomaly that will level itself back out. The rest of it looks pretty standard. On the following page, we seem to be pretty on par with our expenses at the top. Some vehicle expenses, advertising dues, and contributions to organizations. We had budgeted $104,000. We think we're going to be about $53,000 at the end of the year. And that's a savings on vehicle expenses, some of our advertising expenses, and our dues and subscriptions went down. Based upon COVID, some of the professional memberships we had in the past handful of years, like the International City Managers Association, which I belong to, have halved their dues to retain professional managers being part of their nationwide organization. Computer networking, we're right on par where we think we're going to be. Engineering, we thought we were going to spend $141,000. We're looking at maybe getting just shy of 100,000, and again, that kind of counteracts the reimbursables. So we're having less projects coming in that engineering is reviewing, so our revenue is lower, but so our expenses, building expenses on 409 are about on par. On the next page, you will see the fire and EMS contributions were pretty spot on. You'll notice on 411,540, the fire and EMS contribution, as the board is aware, last year we agreed to make a donation of $120,000 to the Honeybrook-Elferson Fire EMS. Last year they did not accept those funds and asked us to push it over this year, which we have done. So that's what that number is. They're not sure if they're going to take that request this year. So you will be seeing a resolution coming up in the next month or two asking us to transfer that $120,000 from the general fund into the EMS fund. That way it's just sitting there. We don't have to keep accounting for it. It'll just be part of their fund balance, and should we need to expend it through the year, it'll be easier just to disperse it there upon the board's approval. UCC and code enforcement, we're a little bit higher. Our building permits and inspections are up. Smaller permits are being requested more than larger development plans. Under planning and zoning, we are going to be under the zoning hearing boards, planning consultants. The first portion, 414, deals with zoning hearing boards. The less zoning hearings we have, the less obviously expenses we have. So we believe we're going to be about $20,000 under. You'll note on the far right, there's a planning consultant. That is going to be for our start of either our comprehensive plan or our land preservation program to utilize for anyone conservancy. If the board is interested in doing the same thing again. 422 at the bottom, health and human services. We budgeted $12,000. We think we're going to be at 8 utilized under the SPCA, and that is our animal welfare officers. We have gotten notice in the past couple of weeks that they are going to be significantly increasing their cost for charges. Part of the managers consortium, many municipalities are having issues with double billing, unfair pricing and practicing. So consortium has about 25 municipalities all willing to negotiate as one large group to see if we can get a more fair and just contract with the SPCA that provides services to many of the municipalities throughout the county. Refuse collection on the bottom is the same. If we flip over to Public Works, you'll just see at the very bottom of the payroll, we are under budget, and that's because the board had authorized the hiring of a full-time Public Works member. We actually brought that person on board last month, so the numbers are lower because we did not pay them for the first 6 months that we did not have it on board. Diesel fuel is holding firm, even with the higher pricing and the uncertainty. So we believe our Public Works cost for heating and operating supplies will be a little bit under budget. Winter maintenance, we're probably going to remove that line item. That was because we had no bids for our snow climbing this year. We had put it out. We had a not harsh winter last year. We have hired yet another person, another staff member, so we might be able to do that work ourselves and not contract it out. But we may leave it in just as a exception in case we have a bad winter. But the reason why we budgeted 20 and used 2,500 is was the lack of the road department going out. At the bottom, that traffic control devices are holding firm. On that next page, you'll see 4 through 6. Storm, sewer, and drains, you'll see $250,000. We believe we're going to be at $80,000, and that was for doing some drainage work on Beaver Dam Road, and also the recently completed project across the plate, replacing some old piping. You'll see, just for the board's knowledge, that next year we're going to put the same line item, move it over into capital purchases. We're moving it out of general fund as they are typically larger projects that are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. It would be more ideal to come out of the capital projects. Tools and repairs were spot on. Road maintenance, 438,800. This year, the board had approved an additional $100,000, as you see here. Speaking with the roadmaster, we typically do a $150,000 road project, and that gets us a little shy of 1 mile of roadway. We'd like to not use that fund this year, and next year do 200,000 to use the 100 this year, the 100 next year, use double the amount of liquid fuels, and hopefully go 3 or 4 miles versus 1. So we will have a project that will be somewhere around the $500,000. Our hope is with the larger projects, we would get bids from larger construction companies, and we might be able to actually get a cost savings, do more, and pay out less per square yard. So that is going to be our ask coming up. Rental equipment is holding about firm. The cemetery lawn service, we are obligated to take care of the cemetery. That was abandoned many, many years ago. We do pay an Amish family to push mow it because we can't get any of our mowers to do that. It's on the far side of the township, so it's much more efficient to pay a local resident to do that. Again, you'll see 452, the recreational programming. Removed because that was the recreational instructor that we had talked about, so we didn't see any revenue on the previous page, so we don't see any expenses here. That is why you saw it zeroed out for this coming year. On the next page, we're going over 454, 000, that's park and maintenance and repairs. That is something that we have typically budgeted about 26,000. We think we're going to come in pretty low. You will note that later on, when we discussed it in October, we had a $60,000 transfer into capital to do some, into RAC to do some park maintenance. We had not utilized those, that $60,000 this year. As you'll see coming up in the next couple of weeks, we did get an estimate to completely mill out the tennis courts and the basketball courts, rip out all the posts, relay all new asphalt, put up new posts, repaint it, seal it, and they would mark them as tennis and pickleball courts, and they would also co-mark the basketball courts for additional pickleball spaces. That estimate is about $330,000. So when we talk about that, we'll have to see if that's a funding project that will work worthwhile. Doing a project of that payment will probably give us 20 to 25 years of service of those new courts. My understanding is that there had been a self-repair attempt to seal up the tennis courts a handful of years ago by our road department. They did give us an estimate just to fill the cracks and reseal it. That came in around $60,000, and they clearly indicated that that would only give us a life extension of 2 to 3 years. Looking at the courts, they are much needed disrepair. And again, part of my goal here is to ensure that our park and recs have maintenance ongoing every single year. And so you might see some of these larger numbers come through until we can get some of our park back up to some more reasonable updated standards. And again, that will be a discussion, some input from the board, just giving you some heads up. 470, 000s or debt services. That's the bond we took out to build this facility that we're sitting in. That's holding steady. You'll actually see our interest going down because we're cresting the downfall. We're on the back end of our payments. Pension administration plans are holding solid. Our insurance went up about $1,500, and that's just a nationwide increase in insurance expenses. We still have very good rates. You'll note at the bottom, 492302, there's 2 separate ones, one for 104, one for 60,000. That 104,000, that first one, that's actually for vehicle depreciation, so we write that off as an expense. We take that funds, we put it into our capital reserve because vehicle purchases for public works come out there. The concept concept is we look at the lifetime of the vehicle. We take the depreciation of the lifetime of it, of the expected replacement cost, and we put it into this line item. So when that vehicle is due for replacement, those funds are already there, and we don't have to remove them from general. That second number that you see there, that $60,000, that is going over to the rec fund, and then again, that was going for the recreation. And I think we'll have to look at the numbers, but they're marked on there twice, so it's marked under 305, and it's also listed under 392,400, and that's the appropriate spot. So that comes to our expense. We anticipated a budget expense of 2.5 million and change. We believe we're going to come under at about 2.89 million. I'm sorry, $2.28 million. But I will have the board note that $200,000 change is for not doing the $100,000 road improvement project. And not utilizing all the $200,000 we had set aside for the stormwater projects. We had only used $200,000. Now, I will note that the balance we were looking at, running a deficit last year of 260, so that is actually a net gain of about $350,000 that we believe will come under the budget. So again, that's just the concept of where we believe we're going to end at the year. So this was based off of the September's treasurer's report, which again only goes through the end of July, so we're only 7/12 through with our predictions. As we get to October, we'll be using September numbers, and that by the time we do our final presentation in November, we will be using October numbers, so we'll be 80% certain of where we'll be. We'll have budget discussions at the following workshops until we get to the December business meeting where the board will make a vote on that. So we do have a few months of making sure that this budget is a sound budget that does meet the goals of the community as driven by the Board of Supervisors. So again, that's where we are. So my ask of the board is over the next few weeks, get back to me with what you believe the township should be doing. And again, that will be included for 2024, but also if you have, excuse me, thoughts about larger capital projects, something that might take a few years to get funding sources, or if you see something, whether that's purchasing of lands, purchasing a plot of land for a new facility, whether that's a park, a new township campus that you think we might need down the road, if the board is in agreement of what type of vision you're looking at, then one, I can find you, if we can do it, and two, how we can do that. And that might be starting some additional savings in capital projects, looking for funding sources, grants and other opportunities. And the benefit of having this capital improvement plan, which is a 5, 10, 15, 20-year vision, we can clearly see if we have large expenditures 5 years down the road, that will allow the administration and the board to understand we might need to start saving now. So when those costs come, we don't need to borrow. We can be financially sound and ensure that we give high level service back to the community. So I'll be happy to answer any questions the board has now. Again, this is high level. I would appreciate meeting with you all over the next handful of weeks and getting you more feedback so I can get you a more firmer budget at the October meeting, and we will go through all funds at that point. But the board does have all the funds in your packet right now. Yep. We only went over the general fund. Right. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Just a suggestion for future meetings, especially when we do the budget review in October. If we could have it projected on the screen, so audience can see what follow along.
So absolutely. So as we did last year, Paul will be on here by Zoom. He shares his screens, and we'll be walking you through that point. I do apologize. Paul and I only met late last week, and I just received this draft copy this morning. Not enough time to put it into the packet before we can get it up onto the Zoom for this evening. But we will ensure that going forward, we will have that.
Just to clarify Paul Jensen's position, he was hired as a recruiter at one point, by the township, so what is his ongoing role?
Yeah, so he was hired to do he was contracted to find the manager, which resulted in my position. The board approved last year bringing him on as a consultant to build the 5-year build out, to do the budgeting and to firm up our financials, how we operate with our money to ensure that there's oversight. We are still working on our capital improvement plan, which is part of his agreement. So he understands until he gets that 5-year capital improvement plan, that he is ours under that general contract, which doesn't cost anything more than we agreed upon last year. So he has graciously offered to assist us again this year. I believe he was valuable last year. So this is just a continuation, ongoing of the contractual agreement we signed last year. So it's not a new agreement, there's no additional costs, other than what we agreed to pay him with building out our 5-year budget.
One other question has to do with reducing our debt service. So we have seen an increase by utilizing our wages, and would that be something that we could build into this next budget to take a look? We're projecting out several years. I believe we have at least 10 years on the mortgage for this building, so is that something we could consider in this upcoming budget?
So I spoke to Peter Bars, our appointed treasurer, about this. Our bonds, they actually redid our debt value, which actually lowered the interest we're paying.
Yes.
So currently, if we're paying a hypothetical 1.5% and Liggett is making 5 to 6% right now, budgetarily, it makes more sense to continue to put our money in the investments that give us the return versus paying down the $1 million or so in debt just to save 1.5. So by continuing to pay out our debt service as it is with the low interest rate and continuing to make 2 or 3 times the amount in interest, it makes fiscal sense to make our money work more to get a better return on the tax dollars, keeping it invested, versus if interest rates were 0 and we were paying 1.5%, which it was when I started here. It might make sense to revisit paying off the debt. But again, when we took that bonds, it was kind of with the understanding that there was going to be a lengthy payout, and we'd be able to structure our budgets to ensure that we're not spiking it, we're not removing services to make a whole payment when we pay for a service, because this building, this administration building, provides service to people that have lived here, that people live here now, and people will live in the future. So it's basically considered a fair share. That debt that we took on provided a service to those residents who were here when we took on that debt. Any current resident who is utilizing our services here are paying for that debt for this facility to provide services back. And again, anybody that moves in the future, some of their tax dollars go to pay off our bond issue, which again, they are also going to use services. So could we? Yes. I could ask Peter Bars if he believes it would make sense, but last year we did revisit this issue. We looked at our bonds and believed it was not viable to do it at that point.
And we're talking about that debt also includes maintenance building as well, the complex.
Correct. Yep.
All right, any other questions from the board?
Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you for that presentation. All right. So next on the agenda will be the review of the agenda for the September 13, 2023 regular meeting. So, Warren, do you have a copy of this package?
Yeah, so you have a printed copy of today's workshop agenda, which is very written, and then the back half of that actually has your full agenda for next week. It has our typical consent agenda items on there, department reports. Upward Investments is asking for some waivers. That is in your digitized board packet in there, along with the review letters. Number 3 is also a subdivision plan that we have talked about, that has been reviewed at the Planning Commission's meeting. Number 4, I'm looking for some more insight. I believe Shane is still here about the Natural Lands Trust. There's a cost in there of about $76,000, $375. I don't know, Shane, do you know if that's the total cost or just the township share?
That's the township share.
Okay, so that's actually what the request would be to preserve some, that's forest, right, correct?
Yeah, that's forest. It's several lots that are already subdivided for building off Beaver Dam Road. It's a project that we looked into back in 2018 and 19, and at the time, the cost seemed a little bit high to us, so we declined to support it. It came back around again, cost is the same, but the values of everything have gone up a lot, so we're now recommending that we support that project.
Thank you, Shane. Number 5 is going to be the public hearing for the Salvo ordinance. We've had 2 requests for the track changes. I did speak to the solicitor today. Beth is fine. If the board is okay, we can release that via email back to whoever has requested it, whoever does request it. Just of note that there was some minor typos and missing sections and labels that was caught during the final proofing.
Yeah.
So the advertised proof, which is a clean copy, has those changes. This red lined track change does not have it. So we just want to make sure if the board is okay with us releasing these track changes, that anybody receiving it understands that it's not a perfect, clean, advertised copy, and that none of the intervening changes were substantial. It was just fixing grammatical and formatting errors. So if the board is fine with that, I can give the okay for Christie to release those track changes to anybody. I will just note for anybody that is here, you currently go onto our website, onto our e-code that has our current version, and then we have the advertised clean version as well. So those would show the changes. However, I understand it's a lengthy document. And that this is more of a procedural change. This is not anything other than cleaning up the verbiage because, as the board is aware, 2015 we had a new comp plan which showed the zoning changes in 2018. And these saldo reviews were just because we had new zoning changes, so we needed to reword, update some of the wording and the language that the state permits us to use to ensure that our saldo is up to specs. You know, we changed things like how many copies that we can receive them digitally. We're not substantially changing the nature of the saldo, just some of the verbiage and the wording, and that was with the input of the planning commission. So if the board materially nods their head at me, I will authorize Christie, if someone sends an info out to Christie Deisher or info, we will send out the track changes along with just the solicitor's comments about, you know, it's not going to be identical as to the clean and advertised copies because she caught some of those grammatical changes in the midst of advertising.
So that delay we have on the agenda for the Salvo ordinance?
No, they're changed. So the advertised version is a clean version, which is proper. The track changes that Beth was working off of, again, as she was putting them into the clean copy, she had noticed it, but the board had approved that the August meeting was the clean copy, and that's what's advertised. So these track changes just have a couple grammatical changes.
So if we get some input from people who reviewed and would there be an opportunity to make any additional changes with that delay in our approving?
So there is a hearing, so it's a legal hearing. So residents can make comments, they can ask questions. At the end of that hearing, the board can elect to adopt it, not adopt it, postpone it, whatever they want to do. So it's a legal hearing, and again, so there's input from the public, they can ask questions. Beth and Mike will be here to kind of explain any questions. Again, that information is out there. The board has had this for 2 or 3 months. I would say if the board has concerns if it's an engineering question, reach out to Mike and Jen. If you have a question about the legality or the wording of some of the items, obviously I would recommend contacting your solicitor prior to next week's hearing, because we definitely want the board who will be making decisions in that are not comfortable with So I
Guidance on the,
I believe I've gotten approval to release that, so we will, if anybody would like that, reach out to Christie. We did get 2 requests, if you know who you are, we have already had them, they will be pushed out to those residents tomorrow. Let me see where we're at here.
just for the sake of, if you're using Microsoft Word, there's a tab called Review, in which you compare, so you can take 2 documents, compare them, and it will filter out and say, this word is missing from that document. So that's one way. But since these are PDFs, we have to convert them over to Word documents. We never make it simple.
So can you announce the date and time of the public hearing, please?
It's next week during the Board of Supervisors meeting. And that's going to be agenda item number 5. Number 6 is enact the ordinance 210-2023, which is a restating of the stormwater management code of ordinances, and that came about because the state mandated an update to the stormwater management, which the county had to enact, and by law we have to enact the county stormwater management plan. Since it's not something that's listed in the municipal planning code, it's not adhering to the yes or no version. And again, the board has had this ordinance for several weeks. And then finally, you'll see it, number 7, a motion to approve or not approve the transfer of $800,000 from the recreation fund to the land preservation fund, contingent upon completion of the grant award for the modified phase 1 of the James Uncle Memorial Park. This was added based upon the feedback the board has heard from the citizens, the members of land preservation, and other committees, believing that those prior transfers of $400,000, which occurred in 2020 and 2021, did not fit what they believed was an enactment of the land preservation funds. So by motioning to approve this, this will close that door. It will put back those funds that the board believes should no longer be used for park and rec. It's contingent upon us completing the grant award. Again, unless the board for some reason does not want to complete that grant, because the grant is a reimbursable grant, we need to ensure that we have enough funds in that. Again, another option can be during our budget discussion, if the board wants to transfer some funds from our general fund reserve in the park and rec to ensure that we have enough funds to pay for it. If the board wishes to put that into our 2024 approved budget, that'll permit the transfer back of those funds sooner. Just as a revisit of it, the skate park should cost about $250,000, which half will be reimbursed by the CNR grant. Additionally, as you have just heard, we're looking at a $300,000 plus potential park improvement. So if the board is interested in doing this and funding park and rec appropriately, we're looking at potentially transferring about $500,000 from our general fund, which we have in reserve, into the park and rec. That would ensure money goes back, and then that will bring up another discussion of what we believe our tax rate should be for this upcoming year. Obviously, if we want to fund park and rec, we want to fund anyone to the EMS because they're struggling, we're going to have to revisit what our village rates are going to be. And that's a discussion point that has consequences. If we elect to increase our millage rate, that's going to increase the money people pay to receive services. Not a conversation for tonight. However, just understand there's expenses and that. But if the board approves this next week, that should put it to rest. That this current board, we can't undo what previous boards, well, we can't undo what previous boards have done. But if we make this decision to approve it, then that matter should be considered addressed appropriately, and then we move on to the other things that are in front of the township to work through, as you're aware, during the process of the comp plan and our land preservation program updates. Okay?
I don't see any old business or other new business list on
So, just for the board's understanding that item F, other business, first on this agenda item, which there is none, but also for the workshop agenda, there is an F as well. I will just remind the board that this is the opportunity for the board members with consensus of the majority of the board to discuss other items. So if there's something that you believe John should have discussed from something at the town hall, or you believe that you want to revisit, while it might not be noted, that is the absolute reason why typically F, other business, is open, because this is obviously the board's meetings. And again, agenda items, some things we have to do, other things are, if I hear a consensus of the board, those agenda items will work on it. If not, this is where the other agenda items come up.
I think we're missing a timetable on submitting for the agenda. I think I submitted the summary of the town hall meeting on the 30th of August. And I think what was delaying that, I was trying to look back at the prior meeting and then build that into the current meeting, which made it nearly impossible to write. So I went back to the original thing when I did in February, just stick to what was discussed in that particular meeting. So that way I was able to get that summary out. But there were 3 items that we did say that we wanted to follow up in the September workshop meeting. And also, Gary, I caught some of that planning commission meeting. I don't think I got to the entire one. There was something that was called out by the planning commission for discussion in this workshop. I think there was one was the church and the other was 2 plans that were submitted. Do you recall if there was anything that you wanted to bring up for this meeting?
I don't recall what they talked about.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the 2 plans, I think Warren addressed the 2 plans that were moved forward. I'm not sure what you were referring to.
Yeah, I'd have to go back to YouTube.
Excuse me?
Is it that throughway?
Throughway.
Off Westbrook.
So I will just tell you, yeah, there was a request to potentially revisit a 3-street on Westbrook Drive. The board has made a decision in the May Board of Supervisors meeting, and that is the position of the Board of Supervisors. To revisit that, you need the applicant to come back and request a revisitation of that. That has not occurred. If the board decides to start talking about it, potentially change their position without being requested, that would be highly irregular, and could potentially potentially for liability. So I would highly discourage the Board of Supervisors from bringing that up. The applicant has not requested a revisitation of any of that.
Okay. All right. That's how we get back to you. Thank you.
Brook. So again, under item F,
Yeah.
John and the board, this is up for wherever other items that you believe should be discussed this evening.
All right, so, Salvo, let me see, actually there's 3 items from the town hall meeting. Calling, I'll bring this up, anyone that want to start with any of those topics? You jot that down in your notes? Or, no? Okay, I'll have to take that up there. Try to hand it over. Yeah, I have the document, I don't have it open. Anyone in the audience who you want to bring up from the town hall meeting, we called out some items on this search. And before we proceed with that, I think we go back to the agenda. So we have open forum. Anyone on this side of the room, would you like to raise any questions or comments? If so, please state your name and your street address. Go right ahead, Bob.
Bob Williams, 55 Caitlin Court.
Yes.
In your review of the budget, was there a line item for a police officer? I didn't hear any budget line item for police.
Not on the current, and we have to bring that up for the 2024 budget.
Right.
Yes. That's a good item, because I think that's one thing that we need to discuss with the borough.
Okay.
I can bring that up.
Can we,
We have another question.
can we talk about the solid?
Let's see if we can get all the open forum done. And any other questions on this side of the room? For open forum? Do I hear anything on this side of the room for open forum? That was also for settlement. Okay. Yes, sir.
Charles Allen, 49 Winslow Lane.
Yes.
So the road work that was done on completed, what was the cost of that?
All right. Do we have any questions?
Where do we find that in the budget, individual project?
Well, that's in the stormwater management.
I know, that's just a big number, that's what I'm saying. What's the individual cost for that, for the Beaver
It's in the
Dam?
treasurer's report that the board receives.
Can we see it?
I assume you can make a public request for the treasurer's report. There is a treasurer's report, I don't know how detailed the public version is. If you made a right to know request, you should be able to receive the treasurer's report.
So just, I'm going back and forth between, when we go into our website, we have a location here where we have all our files and stuff. So some of it is set up for like the planning commission, some for the boards and so forth. So when I'm in there, I'm trying to remember the package that we put together for the board of supervisors and how much is included in that and how much is on the public website. For the most part, we covered most of the material, correct?
The fund balances are on there.
Yeah.
The individual check registers are in the treasurer's report that the board of supervisors have.
Okay.
That lists names, other associated documents.
Because we have attachments to it. Some of those reports go like 130 pages for one month and the other.
The board packet,
The
that's
package.
300 pages.
Yeah.
Typical.
Yeah, we used to get paper copies. At least we got electronic now. Yes, go ahead.
I do have a really quick question that is related to Saldo. Valerie Schultz on 65 Caitlin Court. You know the new owners that have taken over, AJ Blazinski, was at Waste Connections?
Yes.
I sent an email up to you guys a week or so ago, and I didn't get a response. I think it was East Whiteland Township has cited the new company for failure to adhere to their ordinance for weekly trash pickup. I know there are people in Honeybrook Township that are going weeks after weeks without getting their trash picked up. Is that something that the board would consider actually citing this new company for violating the township ordinance? And I'm sure that has to do with, they're probably collecting information on each individual person. I mean, that could add up, those fees could add up.
I started looking into that question, and in our ordinance, I don't think it provides us that opportunity to do so. But when you look at some of the other municipalities, for that one section of our ordinance, I think we have like 2 paragraphs. Some of the municipalities have like 6 or 7 paragraphs covering.
But ours did say it was a weekly requirement. It said, our township ordinance said for waste collections, it had to be picked up at least weekly.
Yeah.
So for some of the people that aren't getting their trash picked up for, weeks on end, that would violate the ordinance.
So I think it defines, and I'm trying to remember what I read on that, so I think that defines, what the parameters of that. Then the next section covers the penalties. And I don't know if you're familiar with that off the top of the head, but I don't think we have anything that, for penalties like some of the other municipalities would have. But
I think one thing that sets us different from East Whiteland, because I saw your Facebook post and I read it, and then I read the East Whiteland
Yeah.
township website, and they have 3 trash haulers that they're allowed to use, Whitetail, AJ, and someone else I don't remember.
Yeah.
So we don't make residents use AJ. We allow people, or whatever it is, we allow people to use whoever they want. And so I don't know that it's really the same, in apple and orange.
yeah. Another thing, we did have a conversation at the COG meeting So the other municipalities are talking about it and seeing what could be done. There's one municipality, well, actually, the state rep that said he is taking this to Harrisburg and to raise concern. But I can't say that I'm an expert on the law and stuff, but I think that's a state level, the licensing for haulers.
I mean, there have been residents that have come and talked to Katie Moose, and they've said,
Yeah.
there's nothing we can do. So everybody seems to throw their hands up. I think the Attorney General has issued some fines that were pretty hefty, but
Yeah.
it still hasn't solved the problem.
Oh, I'm on this southwest corner, probably in the last streets to get picked up, and no pickup today, trash or recyclables.
The problem is some of the other haulers are small. I mean, they're struggling to get up to speed to fill the void, and it's a mess.
And I've stayed with AJ for 20 years, and never had a problem. The guys on the truck were always great, the guys in the office, so I was always pleased with AJ, but they're not the same company.
Well, I think that they're having a lot of trouble hiring drivers, like all
Yeah.
employers, the short staff.
I've heard some of that is their own.
But that's also a health concern.
Yeah.
Can I add something to that?
If you have a question, just go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add something to what Valerie said. I called the Ray again, 43 Foxview Road. I called the office here at the township, and they said, or Christie told me that we were paying our solicitor to look into that. And I thought, well, how much are we paying back to look into that for a citation? So is the board of supervisors aware that we're paying back to look into that situation?
I haven't heard that.
So Beth is aware of the situation. Not that she's actively spending hours and hours and hours, but she had looked into it. The reality is, we are not a single hauler municipality, which means we don't have contract with any trash haulers. What is occurring out where she resides is AJ Valinsky is just canceling services to all the residents within the municipality. So I'm not going to say she's spending hours and hours. She looked into it and said, here's a concern. Typically, we start citing people or companies to get them to start doing the right thing. It seems that AJ Valinsky has bought a company. They're going through some growing pains. They have some issues. They are actually being more strict with the guidelines that the federal government has with drivers, and that's causing drivers to leave because they can't work the hours that they had worked. The concern is if we start citing them here, since we don't have a single hauler contract, it would be very easy for AJ Valinsky just to cancel all the contracts in the Brook Township because there's no legal obligation to it, and they can use those resources to start going to the single hauler municipalities where those penalties are built into those contracts. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. If you start citing them, and again, they're trying to hire workers, they're trying to build their business back. What are the residents going to say if we issue them a citation and it has canceled thousands of contracts here? Now, people are going to call back and be upset. It's a township, we lose their trash hauler for 20 years.
No, I understand. I mean, I asked the township what I should do because my trash started not being picked up starting June 6th.
So you have the right to pick any hauler, absolutely. You can shop.
But I also don't, well, and I asked the office if they had any recommendations, and they gave just broad recommendations to choose to use or not. But again, just like what you're saying, I didn't want to lose my trash pickup, but also in calling each week, they've been very polite in saying that they might disregard recycling. And I know we're all concerned about, keeping
And
everything
legally, they
clean.
cannot do that. They know they can't do that. There's state laws requiring them to pick up the recycling. And again, it's, if we push too hard, and again, I'm not saying it will happen,
Right.
but because they bought AJ Valinsky and Eagle, that's 2 of the 3 trash haulers that typically do business here.
But that's what they're telling, I'm just saying to you, that's what they're telling the residents. And when I called the township told me that the solicitor was looking into it.
She had looked into it a while back. I don't want you to believe that she's working 10 or 20 hours. She looked into the situation, and again, our staff is just kind of saying they've looked into it, because we don't have great answers sometimes with something that's out of our control. We don't provide trash services. Again, we don't have any legal contract with any trash hauler, so most single hauler contracts have penalties.
I guess my concern is then saying, like to the board of supervisors, how many things do we actually know what we're putting on Beth's plate that she's actually, as a community,
Oh,
we're
that's
paying
easy,
for?
that's very easy to answer. I'm sorry to interrupt you. The Board of Supervisors gets a
Okay,
solicitor report every single month, which clearly shows exactly
What the
what
budget
they're
is.
what they're working on.
okay,
And there's confidential and non-confidential versions of that.
okay.
And again, we budget for legal services. I can tell you,
Right, but if there's no underlining, right, you might budget for legal services, but there might not be, I'm sorry, I might be going past that 3 minutes. There might be not an itemized list. So like when Beth was looking into the parks, that everyone agreed that we should put in Foxborough, like that was a waste of money. I'm a resident, so I can kind of say that. But again, so that was a line item that just went on the, a legal item.
so this is I'm sorry, but, so most of the time that the solicitor is acting for the township, they are working with the manager.
Okay,
I authorize and give permission for our solicitor and any contracted services to do or not do work. And again, part of the budget process is we assign an item amount to a line item. And again, we're basing that on how much we've used in the past, what those costs of services are. But this is not broken down to 5 hours of this, 6 hours of that. That is just not how government works.
okay.
If
So
some
maybe
emergency
just-
happens tomorrow,
Right.
and we have to use 10 hours of solicitor services,
Right.
it's irrational to say, oh, you're cut off, you're done.
I get it.
So every single bill that comes into this municipality is inputted by the treasurer, verified by me. If it goes through Public Works, it's verified through that department head before it comes to me. So the treasurer inputs it. If it's a department head, they sign off it, I sign off it. If that goes that route, and that we agree that they all fall in with approved purchases, based upon the budget number, then checks are prepared and it goes to the Board of Supervisors. And when they vote on accepting the treasurer's report at the beginning of that consent agenda, they have a packet which has all the check registers, all the profit and losses, where we're at with our budget, how far we've expended, where we have been percentage-wise this month as compared to the same time last month, so they can see if we're over, if we're under, what the bills are for, what they're approved. They're getting treasurer's reports, they're getting engineering reports, they're getting solicitor reports, which is all clearly shown with all of these contracted services are doing every single month. So it goes through several checks and balances, and ultimately the board reviews these vast packets of information, and they review it all, and they verify, again, they're the only ones that can pay off any money here, by their signatures on those checks. They're validating that all those checks and balances have occurred. So it's a very detailed process, which might not look it on that side, but again, we are spending 15, 20 hours working on making sure that the expenditures that we're doing in this township are appropriate.
Okay. I respectfully accept that, what you shared with me, Warren. I do want to say to the board, when we're looking at the budget, we're talking about the $800,000 that went to land conservation. I would hope that you would approve that next week, so those funds to be put back. So if you were watching the budget all along, that's something that should have been caught. That's a lot of money. So if these underlying little things that are kind of bothering the community are getting missed, then they're getting missed by you first.
And if I may, I wouldn't say that those purchases or that expense went unnoticed by the board,
Okay.
okay? So,
But you
again,
say previous boards versus this board.
so again, a budget process is several months, right? It is,
I'm sorry, Warren, I'm taking a lot of your time.
it's okay. Listen, I don't want you to leave concerned that something is not being seen by the board. The reality is that for the majority of boards for the last 60 years, these rooms all over the Commonwealth and all over the country have been particularly empty. And that when someone looks at making a large capital purchase, a professional manager, a professional treasurer is going to say, this is what it's going to cost, this is some funding sources. That $400,000 did not go sight unseen. It was discussed with James Humboldt Memorial Park. It was discussed with Park and Rec. It was discussed with land preservation. It was discussed with that board at that time, and they agreed it was a worthwhile venture. It was permitted under the law that had been updated, and there was no public dissent to it. And that might just because, again, board meetings typically aren't well attended.
Right.
So based upon all of the information, that board at that time probably thought they were doing something good.
Right, but the additional
The additional $400,000, I have no doubt, was put through in a budget, explained by a manager,
Right.
put through the treasurer's report, and again, I will probably tell you that there's probably no dissent about doing that. So it's not that it's missed, is that that manager at that time, with the treasurer, and looking at a grant and this project, which is several $1 million, believed that was a potential funding source, which is permitted by law. And there was no pushback or dissent from the community. So the board, based upon what they were told, the information they read, lawfully could do that. And now that,
At this point, I'm sorry.
I had an idea.
I did want to follow up to your original question, and that is, we do trust that the company, this contract, and the sanitation services will be able to step up, because I mean, they're in competition with other companies, they better step up. But in the meantime, being that it's summer months, I ended up, I saw some magnets in my can. So an advice, warrant, is a spray, like a Clorox spray, you have to use on your can. Also, my experience with a company that had very poor customer service in the past, and I think you know that company, Comcast. Anytime I lost service, I always kept track of it. So I call them up, and I give them a list on all these dates. And the same thing with now with the missed pickups. I call them up, tell them, and they credit my bill. $137, they give me a $15 credit. But at least I get some. There's some satisfaction, but still, I got to carry garbage can, smelling cans in the backyard. So unfortunately, they're not moving fast enough during the summer months, and that's not good.
And 2 new businesses have popped up to just clean out people's trash cans.
They have.
And there's been
Opportunity
another
knocks.
commercial hauler that's only, according to the Facebook, operating, I believe, in Honeybrook Township to pick up commercial dumpsters.
I just don't know if after 20 years, do I want to make a change? And then, I don't know,
Yeah.
big choice.
I know sometimes keeping the faith, I don't know. I'll have to say, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Looking at the town hall meeting minutes,
no, we have a question.
oh yeah, sorry. Yes, please.
Susan Jones, 20 People Road. Waste Connections is in Texas.
Yes.
They bought AJ Blinsky, they bought Eagle. They own trash companies in 48 states in the United States and the 1 or 2 in Canada. Okay, I wrote to them. Of course, I got nothing back. But when trash companies or do companies or businesses want to come and work in the township, they required to take out a permit?
Not on that
I
process.
mean, I've seen that in many municipalities, somebody's gonna work in the township, you have a plumber come in or something, they need a license to work in the township. Does now Waste Connections, are they required to have a permit to
Isn't
work
that
in the
at the
township?
state level, the licensing for haulers?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah, I
they
think they
have
would
a
have to
permit,
produce, they'd have to produce and say that they did get licenses to operate in the state now.
right, so if they're having permits to work in the township and they're not fulfilling that, I mean, I feel sorry for the people of Lisinski and Eagle because the poor girls in the office are getting the
Yeah.
beat down and it's not their fault. It's Waste Connections is the one pulling the strings. Other companies, we're supposed to find our own company, which is fine. I've called so many companies, they don't come into Honeybrook Township. There's only like 3 companies that come in Honeybrook Township. One of them is a guy out of past New Holland who only has 1 pickup truck, 1 trash truck, and now he said he's buying another truck. And he says, oh, I can come down and do you once a week. They don't have enough people to do it. So we're kind of like strapped.
Yes. Could I just pause for 1 second? Some of your comments, in the background, and we're recording it, and then they pick up and they interfere with conversation here. So,
So I'm just saying, if they, you know, have to pay for a permit to work in the township, the communication should be with Waste Connections.
yes.
Because Eagle and Zinsky, like I said, they're just puppets right now.
But, and
They haven't found a permit that I know of.
yeah, but I'm saying from
They
an
don't.
individual, I mean, I would
They're
follow,
not
I would follow
paying for
with,
Waste Township.
It's not required.
it's not a requirement, I'm saying it's to follow, it's a will, with us to follow up with that company and say, you know, we're hearing a lot of complaints about it, and you need to step up. But it depends on the management of the company if they really care about the.
I'm used to seeing, you know, companies have to get registered with the township to work in the township.
Well, it's like Comcast does it as well. And they pushed out their parts of their companies, they got big and they got careless with their customer service for a number of years. Yeah. I think, unfortunately, the same thing happened here. Thanks, Susan, for your comments. All right, we did have action items, I did call up. One of them has to do on the law enforcement. So where we left that in our town hall meeting, there are a few police officers who have expressed an interest in working with us to discuss our law enforcement needs. The only thing is we have to pinpoint and say exactly what that direction would be. Are we looking at a temporary need? I don't know if there's something pressing at the moment that we have to act on it, or are we looking long-term? And those are some of the parameters we have to consider, or all the above, so that when we do sit down with some of the people who are wanting to work with us, that we have some clear direction. So do you want to proceed, and if so, in what direction would you like to go with that? Or have you any thoughts on that?
I will also just caution the board about making deliberations at a workshop.
Okay, yeah.
This is a discussion period, you should,
Can you
generally,
speak up,
have your,
please?
excuse
Didn't
me.
hear you when you're sitting back.
I'm sorry. This is not a business meeting, so the board should not be making decisions. They should be discussing.
All right, so
This is
then,
an information gathering meeting. This is not the place to make deliberations.
so then can we raise a question to
You can talk about police services, but I would hesitate saying, do you want to do this? Do you want to seek input or guidance? I think that is
as a
fair
word is
game.
appropriate,
But
we'll
when
get
you
that
start-
direction, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So we've been going for a few months, and I just wanted to make sure that we have, you know, some clarity there. And should we bring this up at our next township meeting, or do we want to start a task force, and if so, you know, what that direction would be? I think the residents are just looking for an answer. Are we moving on it or not? And, you know, came up a few months ago at the last town hall meeting that there's an opportunity to work with COG, but, you know, when we go to the COG, we're asking the same questions, what exactly are you looking for? So that's what it is, clear on.
Well, there were some of us who did talk to, a neighboring municipality, but,
Can you speak up, please?
Yeah.
You got your
Can you
microphone?
bring the mic closer to you? so I pick it up?
I said there were
Oh,
some,
no, this is for the,
there have been, there was a discussion about, with a neighboring municipality, but, no timeline was decided about what, we were information gathering, we were just talking,
Yeah.
that's it, to get information as to what services could be provided, potentially.
Mhm.
And we have, we brought that up last month.
Mhm.
So, are you looking, I am not ready to decide anything right now.
Well, I think, we said we are information gathering, but we have to kind of narrow it down. It's like writing a book. You start off with all these great ideas, finally you have to narrow it down to get into, a specific. So are we, you know, that's what I gotta take back to the COG, so.
Well, I think maybe the first part is what's already started is
Mhm.
to gather what information, what we can do, what are our options, and then, once we know what our options are, what do we actually want?
Yeah, because
What
we
do
can't
need? What do we need?
decide.
What do we want?
Yeah,
What can we pay for?
two sessions, we're not gonna sit down and say, well, we know exactly, because then we're gonna start looking at funding and all that. It's just to give the assurance to the municipality that, when we say we're looking into it, you know, we are looking into it, and in what fashion, what direction it's going in, and then, or is it, we're just saying by the end of the year, we really didn't come up with anything. I don't think that's what people want to hear. So I think we do have a sincere effort and interest going on, we just gotta really, and I think narrow it down to short-term, long-term, all the above, and then go back, use something like the COG as a forum to help us get that information. We had some police officers said that they're willing to step in and work with us. If we can pull them in, that would be great. So,
When you say police officers, you mean individuals?
yes, we had, Steve Jones was one person who said that he'd be interested in helping us out. A few years ago, Mr. Cahill from the borough was interested in working with us. There's a neighbor of mine who is a K-9 police officer. He said he'd be willing to work with us. So, and I'm sure some people may come up with some other names. And we also have a police officer sitting next to us as well. Yeah.
And if I may,
Yes.
we hear the voices in the room, and it's appreciative. We want to hear residents. These are a small portion of it. What I might encourage the board to do,
Voice.
yeah, it's not working. This one's not working.
I got a good one. Good one.
I'll just speak up. I would recommend the board reach out to their constituents, which might fall outside of the people in this room, because we hear the voices of the people that attend the meeting. Well, we have 8,000 plus residents, and what we definitely don't want to do is special interest, is govern to the voices that show up and that are providing us our feedback without then taking that information and reaching out to the larger public, because all of you have run for office, are available for phone calls, and maybe at this point, again, this is my recommendation, is that you start reaching out to the networks outside of this room and see if the general consensus through all of the community is a need for it.
Well, we're limited in our time as well. We can't be going out to thousands each. But to the point is that,
Put it on a ballot.
yeah, okay, yeah. We've done that path
We
before.
cannot put it on the ballot, and I'm not saying that you need to reach out to 8,000 residents. What I'm saying is that I have no doubt that everyone sitting at this table have people that do not show up at this meeting that they can communicate with, that are members of the community, whether it's Plain Sec, different portions of the township, and maybe have them facilitate with their neighbors if they have concerns. And now you're not going knocking on 1,000 doors.
And it's to your point, if I may, what we did a few years ago with land preservation, it was this wide open thing. So we ended up coming up with, you know, narrowing it down, saying we're looking at farmland preservation, such and such, because that was what people were saying. It's a nice proposal to give us some kind of plan, like talk law enforcement. Are you talking about a full-scale 24/7, things like that? Right now, I can't respond to it. I say I don't think we could even approach that because the funding costs of the police department, available police. So they're really, when we talk to people, they're saying, I like the idea of law enforcement, but you gotta be a little more specific in what you're trying to achieve here.
And it's getting a more
Yeah.
varied
Yes.
feedback from the community will help.
Yeah.
I will also say, you know, I spent 29 years in law enforcement, and I can tell you that most police officers that work in uniforms might not understand the budgetary concerns that go with a large-scale budget, and not to dissuade anybody, again, just to bring it back to center, law enforcement is essentially at the behest of the Board of Supervisors, but once you start down that path, this is a committal, which again, as you clearly has noted, there are many avenues and funding issues that come about with it, and I'm just saying, maybe the first step is getting a larger pool of information everyone can then bring that back and talk in a workshop, and
Yeah.
each,
And this is like the second step. The first step was that we had a public forum, a town hall meeting, and several people had raised the question, so that was the whole thing. We said that the town hall meeting was non-committal, but the residents say, since we brought this up, 2 successive town hall meetings, are you interested in pursuing this? And the answer is yes. If so, then what would it be? No, we're not going to look that direction.
correct,
That's
and again, I guess my question, if you had to pull all of the people that have given you feedback, is that 50, is that 100, is that 600, is that 800, is that 1,000? And I think
We have a great
larger,
We have a great opportunity, it's called Harmony Day, we have tables set up, we can have people put a pad out there with a piece of paper. Would you like Honeybrook Township to explore law enforcement, something along that line, come back with 100 names, something along that line? I do see a resident has a hand up, so Karen, please go ahead.
A lot of the problem is there's no transparency with you guys, and people don't trust you guys. That's why they don't want to come. And secondly, are we, Tracy, warn you that you have to lay back in your recliner, like, oh, I gotta be here?
All right, Karen, excuse me, I do appreciate that, your observations, but could you just hold for a second? Yeah.
Don't tell me to stop.
Excuse me for a second, let's not get it down to a personal level here. And that's where I want to make sure that, you do have an opportunity to speak. This is a very important subject, our home ownership and such, that we want to ensure we have our health and safety concerns met. But let's keep it to some points here that we can work with. Susan, I think you, yes.
Harmony Day is in the borough. A lot of people in the township don't go to Harmony Day.
Yes.
So the borough would care less about the township.
Yeah,
They've
yeah,
got their
because, yeah.
police. They took a part-time police officer from one of the Brady Wines and brought him up and made, now you have one in hand or whatever. But that's borough, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you made a good point, because I did a survey at the school one time, and we had over 100 people sign a petition, but half of them were from the borough.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
First of all, there have been some varying perceptions about the need for law enforcement. Some people perceive that it's not needed, other people perceive that it's needed like yesterday. So what I've asked at the town hall meeting is for us to gather the actual information from Pennsylvania State Police, get the incident statistics over the last 5 years, and see what the trends are. I know that doesn't capture all of their calls and all of the work that they're doing, but it's going to capture a good portion of the information that we need. And then also get the response time.
Yeah.
And I know they're not thrilled about giving that out to individual people, but I would hope that when a municipality asks for that information, that they would provide it. People need cold, hard facts and statistics.
Yes.
They don't trust people's perception.
Right.
So that's the only way you're going to know what you need. Because it may be just one region of the township that needs it. It could just be traffic enforcement. You might not need 24/7 police enforcement. So you need to get that basic information first before you can come forward.
Yeah. And going back, we're really going back to time when we disbanded our police department. There was a summary report, and it provided like a 5-year look back of the police coverage that was provided by the police department, so that when we have the opportunity to look again at a police department, we're going to have some baseline to work with. That's 2005, and in 2015 or so, we did a task force. We got information from Harrisburg, but then again, that's over 7 years.
They should
We
have
can,
all
we
that.
can, yeah, there's databases have improved significantly. We can request information and go from there. But I think it just comes down to just one basic question. Does the board want to take a step forward in response to the questions that have been raised at the town hall meeting? Because to our point, we were not obligated to do so, but if we're hearing enough residents speak up about it, then maybe it might be time to take another look at it. That's how I'm rounding up the question, and I think it wouldn't hurt for us, as you say, gather some of that information, then go back to the COG, see if there's any options available to us, and then, at some point within a few months, be able to say, this is what we got. All right. So do I hear from the board, do you feel that that's, decision I think we have to make at the next meeting?
It's something we can decide.
Tracy, any thoughts on that?
I think she actually had a couple good points. I think we need to figure out, is there an actual need
Yeah.
for police coverage? What are the incidents that they would potentially cover? And then what would be the cost of the police? So, you know, does it actually make sense? To the person that had their house broken into one time,
Yeah.
their perspective is, yeah, we need police, 100%.
Yeah.
To the person that lives in a development and has never had any problems, they have a completely different perspective.
I've had
It
a house,
really depends on what your experience is.
I've had a house across the street from me, a woman was in the house, and the house was broken into, she was upstairs, went downstairs and found the back door of her house wide open. You know? And we do have another concern, and that is with new development coming in, there's a significant amount of potential more residents moving in, more cars, and one end of the township is going to take a beating, and then also on the United States for the Amish community. The difficulties they already had trying to get around this township. If we're adding another 1,000 cars, it's going to make it kind of difficult for them to get around as well. So we don't have any traffic lights, and that's something that 25 square miles with no traffic lights. I think at this point we pretty much covered what we could for this topic. I think there is enough of an interest. It's up to the board to just say we could reach out to Harrisburg, we could reach out to whatever, and start taking up some stats on that. All right.
I will just say the statistics are available for Part 1 and Part 2 crimes on a federal database. They are searchable and open to the
I
public.
think back there, sorry, you were able to come up with those stats. I'm sorry, just like the name. Renee, you were able to take up some stats for us one time. Was that right? Yeah.
Not most recent though, right?
Okay. I think this issue was pretty much covered at this point. I do want to take a pause for a moment and recognize Ken Ross from the food pantry. So I'll just say a wonderful job that you and the volunteers are doing. There's a significantly increased need with the recent fundraising, with the golf outing coming up. And we just thank you very much for what is going on.
I believe you wanted to kind of speak for a few minutes about where they landed with funding. As the board is aware that we have guaranteed
Yes.
$88,000 over the course of 24 months.
Yes.
Ken and I have speak on a semi-consistent basis, and I believe Ken does have has an ask of the board as it relates to the budget. So,
Yes, Steve, you come up to the microphone. This way it picks up better on the video. Thank you.
Right, so my name is Ken Ross. I chair of the board of the Honeyburg Food Pantry 11 years that we've been in business. And I think to Warren's point, the ask, maybe most succinctly, is that the current funding that is provided by the township to us, $3,500 a month, goes through April of '24, and the request was to extend that for the balance of the year as part of your budgetary process in '24. Purpose of sort of what's driving the need, it's really a couple of variables that are going in the wrong direction. One, the increase in need. We're seeing now, year-to-date, about 22% more people than we've seen at any time historically. At the same time, the retail donations are down 20%. Meat, as a specific item, is down 30% from prior year. So when you put it all together, the struggle is to meet the need of the residents, continue to do all the other things that we do, backpack, educating the people who come for food, employment assistance, having legal clinics from legal aid, anything and everything is provided when people are coming to get their food. We want to continue to do that. We want to meet the need. And in order to do that, a continuation of your funding would be greatly appreciated. The backpack program alone has seen now 115 kids from what historically has been about 50. And that's maybe just one anecdote of the kinds of things that are going on. The only other thing I would say about the benefit of what we do to the township is it isn't just in the numbers of people we see. We could be seeing our typical run rate at 700 people a month, or we could be seeing now the over 1,000 that we're seeing. I think what's most important is the fact that we're there. And I don't think a community like Honeybrook wants to have people walking around the streets hungry. I don't think we want people asking people for money, asking people for food. So I think having a resource to direct to and knowing that we're going to respond to those emergency needs within 48 hours, usually within a day. And we had 8 last week alone. I think that's the other benefit.
Thank you. One other question. There are some people who end up in this situation due to like fires in their homes and stuff, and jobs, and all different reasons and stuff. But is there a place to donate like furniture? Like I got a dresser and I don't want to just toss it out on the street. Somebody might come along and grab it. But, if there's that central location where we could put it so that somebody's a victim of a fire, they now need furniture that
Right.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, what I would suggest is that they contact us
Yes.
and we resource them
Yep.
to those who would be best able to meet that need. We've been trying to stay out of the business of furniture that can't be hauled by individuals who are coming to get it.
Yes.
Simply because the resources to haul it, the trucks that we need to do it, and the sort of overwhelming need to source the amount of food that we're buying on a daily basis. We're sort of trying to find other places to get those needs met as opposed to turnstiling furniture through our place. I mean, we're literally providing 60 pounds of food per family per distribution.
Yeah. Yes.
That's a lot of food to move, and
I understand.
And even though we have 92 volunteers that you commended so well, we don't want to take those people beyond the limits of what they're willing to do for us.
Thank you for everything you do for the township. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for all your support.
Yeah, so you'll be seeing that.
Yeah.
And again, I think Ken and I talked about that. I think it should be a perpetual donation until the point that the food bank does not believe that additional funding would be needed. So my hope is that instead of Ken coming every year asking for the donations to continue, that the board agrees that it's a worthy cause and that we much prefer Ken just to come to tell us how well he's serving the community and not have to think about where the funding is going to come from for the following year.
Maybe just one last quick point on John's introduction about fundraising efforts, golf outing. The golf outing is planned for October 10th. But I think to the other point, we don't typically ask people for money as aggressively as we have this summer. But we did a campaign during July and August where our target was $30,000, which we believe will cover the produce and meat for the incremental numbers of people that we're seeing. We've exceeded that target through the end of the month and through Suburban Brewery's donation of a beer that they canned specifically for us, and the proceeds for all of that. It's called Food for Thought. It's an IPA that they have been selling for the last couple of weeks. We think that plus the funds that we've raised are going to allow us to meet that produce and meat need through the balance of the year for this now incremental number of people, and still do all of our holiday programs.
Have you guys advertised about that beer? What are you saying?
Well, it's been on our site, it's been out in Suburban Breweries, and it probably isn't the most sophisticated campaign. They're still selling it.
It's been on Honeybrook residents, if you want people. Honeybrook residence page would be good to put it on there.
I thought someone shared it to that page. Yeah. Anyway, back to you.
One last item I could say, came out of that town hall meeting, we're going to look at the comp plan task force. I think we do have an understanding that we need to be moving on that. All right. At this point, winding down for any additional comments, closing remarks from the side of the room.
Do you want us to keep our solid comments?
By solid comments, I think we're pretty much close for this meeting at this point, but we still have a few items we need. Okay. Could we just limit it, like, bring up a few of the questions on the salvo? I looked at it, there's 9 parts to it. 7 out of the 9 have modifications to it. On the definitions page, we added about 5 new definitions. We took about 3 out of there, and the rest of those modifications, I believe there's over 20 definitions were modified. One of them has to do with the title of the Honeybrook Municipal Comprehensive Plan of 2015. I think that's the title. But when you go into the comp plan, it says the 2015, so I think it's just, we pretty much know. But I think that's part of the reason we saw these revisions in Saldo, is that when you're reading Saldo, you should be reading the same word verbiage in the other parts of what the township documents have. So that was part of the effort. Please go ahead.
I'll try and keep it somewhat brief. Page 43, when they talk about land requirements, they said proposed land shall be coordinated with existing nearby neighborhoods so that the whole community may develop harmoniously. No land shall be developed unless all hazards to life, health, property, or property from flood, fire, disease have been eliminated. And I have not seen, I know the DR Horton plan has not been complete, but we need to make sure that if we're going to have that in here, we're holding DR Horton accountable and making sure all of the hazards associated with being near a high-quality waterway, that's the water source for Wilmington, Delaware, and a high-quality waterway are kept pristine and not impacted in any way, especially by the pipeline or any risk to that. Page 59.
Excuse me, can you refer to the page numbers? Do you have the section numbers?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can give that to you guys, but page 59 and 60, they also talk about traffic documentation. We've learned with DR Horton, unless you say that it's a DOT-approved traffic study, it's an absolute joke. They said 1,500 people would be moving into that development, and they said no impact on traffic. It was a joke. They did no DOT-approved study. So that language needs to be updated. On page 83, they talked about recreation and open space. It indicated that especially for a subdivision that contains fewer than 20 single-family detached dwellings, or larger developments, the board could choose to have them pay a fee in lieu of the open space. And they said that this money, or fee in lieu of, would be to help the township defray the eventual cost of providing public open space and recreational facilities to serve the residents of the community. So to me, that means that this fee in lieu of money should be going towards parks and recreation. And if that's the case, I'd like to know where that money has gone to date and why Parks and Recreation has not had a budget for a number of years. It also seems as though there is no standard fee that's being established for fee in lieu of. And throughout this document, it indicates that the Board of Supervisors can reduce the open space requirement or fee in lieu of requirement as they see fit. We want specific requirements that are followed and not have these requirements be so general and so up in the air. That's not protecting our community and it's not protecting our open space. And it also says that on page 115 for the administration section, that developers can declare undue hardship, which will allow them to get approval to reduce those open space or fee in lieu of requirements. Again, that should not be allowed. It's not protecting our township to let a developer come in and say, oh, sorry, I'm not going to make a couple $1 million profit this year. That's not protecting us. The other requirement was section 22-630, and they talked about wetland protection district. All they said is that a recognized professional with competence in the field shall review aerial photographs, soils, geologic, and other available data of the possible development. And I think it needs to be specified of what this recognized professional is. It needs to be a certified wetlands expert, someone who actually knows what they're talking about as certification in this field. We need to be more specific throughout this document. It's way too general and doesn't allow the township to hold the developers accountable. Thanks.
In response to your concern about the professional, there are some organizations out there. One is the Society of Wetland Scientists. They can make recommendations of qualified people. There's also the Society of Wetland Managers, and they can also make recommendations. The difference is that the scientists are looking more into the hydrology, the managers are looking more at the regulation aspects of it. So when they're looking at delineation of wetlands, the scientists will be more broad in his definition, looking at greater land area where the manager may be a little more restrictive and narrow in what he would feel is protected areas. So that's something, and I think another aspect of it, if we're losing some of that wetland, that there should be some negotiation as to providing some fee in lieu of providing for protection of a wetland in Honeybrook Township and stored for its protection, including in some preservation effort. Because the state of Pennsylvania has lost over half of its wetlands, and we cannot continue along that, in that direction. So there's two organizations that we can start with, if that could be included. Because when I looked at this definition of wetlands in Saldo, I'm not happy with it because I think it's very broad and it refers to DEP. When I looked at the DEP site, it's not there. What they're referring to is the definition from the Army Corps of Engineers, which would be the deciding definition when they make the final determination of that property on the court.
Hey, don't get me wrong, I don't support this fee in lieu of for larger developments, period.
Yes.
I mean, I understand for the smaller developments, it doesn't make sense to necessarily, but for the larger developments, there should be no option.
Yeah. Okay. Here, one more question back here.
Shane Head, 410 Northville Road, also about Saldo. Agreeing with and building on everything Val just said, I think that this could have a lot more teeth to it. I've noted a lot of places, like we say for penalties, there's a $500 fine that we can levy against a company. I mean, that's a rounding error for a company like Gordon's. I mean, that's the cost of doing business. Companies just walk right over stuff like that all the time. So I think we really need to beef up things like that. There are lots of places where we say we want a builder to give us an 18-month warranty on a road they build or a tree they plant. So, I mean, 18 months, that's really all we're holding them to? Like, I got a better warranty than my phone. For lots of things, we don't really say anything about what we need to have in terms of capacity to, like, can we even handle this? If we find that we don't have enough capacity to handle that, what do we do? Like, if the NCCMA plant can't handle 1,000 more toilets flushing at it, does that, and they have to expand, you know, there's nothing that says this developer is gonna have to pay for that plant expansion if we don't have that capacity. Them not having to pay for it, that means we get to pay for it.
Other townships do require that, though.
Yes, there are such things as impact fees the developers often have to pay other municipalities when they're going to be having a significant impact on the school capacity, sewage capacity, water capacity. And also, there are numerous places where we say we want some kind of study, but we don't say anything really about what the requirements are around that. I think in every case where we say we want to have a study, we have to say, like, we can also say, we can pick our person who meets our requirements to do a study, and you pay for it. I think that's only fair, especially for things like the water table. Like, I get my water from the spring house. If the water table drops, my water goes away. And now I've got to spend $15,000 to have somebody dig me a well. That's there. I'm not the only person in that boat in the township. Lots of people have wells that aren't that deep. If our water table drops because we put in a new development, and now they're pumping out all kinds of water, and the aquifer just can't handle it, that's something we got to consider. And for other utilities, there are lots of service providers like Comcast and Verizon that have kind of cherry-picked where they build out service in this township. So I can't get fires where I live. I only can get service electric.
Yeah.
They stop prior to me. So there's a lot of things in this. I know I only have a little bit of time, but I mean, I would send this back. I would add more teeth to it, and I wouldn't approve it at the next meeting. Thank you.
And to add to some of the comments that you made, if you're looking at the document, it still has some typos and things. That this was supposed to clean it up, and I found a few in here. And there was even the use of some words, changing different adverbs, and they were replacing correct words with incorrect words. I don't know who did the editing on this. I think what we can do at this point, any of the comments that you have, send them to manager, board of supervisors, and copy the planning commission as well. And then we can take a look at some of them. Please include, you gave us page numbers, but the section number really hones in on what you're talking about. And I think there is some room for improvement because just on the definition of street, the word defined and the definition run into each other. So as an example, the arterial comes out arterial law, and it's just like careless, that if you're using a document like this, you should be a little bit careful in the way it's worded. Just use Microsoft spell check will help. Any other? Yes, we have one last one here. I didn't hear that one.
I didn't do sessions and everything else. It would be
Yes.
nice to, case the secretary of the morning. Anyway, I mean, all she had to do, like, cut and paste of and then show either with the square parentheses or
Yeah.
round parentheses or whatever, so that we can see what's coming out and what's going in. All I know is that, because the worked up ordinance was done in private, nobody got to see anything. We didn't see a red line version. It was like, there's impact study, there's changes in the impact study requirements. What are they? Are they more restrictive to developers? Are they less restrictive? Plan submissions, there were changes made. Are the changes made more restrictive or less restrictive? Less? Okay, so why are these restrictives, or these things being less restrictive to developers?
When you replace the word shall and you replace it with may.
Yeah, that's another thing in there. The word shall needs to go in there, where they may do something, means they don't have to do it. And
That's
believe
some-
me, I worked with the developers for 18 years, and if they don't have to do something, they won't do it. I've been there, I've seen it, I've done it.
And you made a good point, Chris. If I could add it to what you said, there is a line that was added in there, clause saying, this is not mandatory.
Right, so that means,
It's reading.
that throw
It's
it out, we
reading.
don't need it. And like I said, I've seen it, we've argued with them like for years. Maintenance, security requirements, who benefits the township or the developer? Street designs, again, who's benefiting? The township or the developer? And then it says, in the announcement, it says there's various updates. a camping park in there. Do we have one? Do we have the ability to put a campground in here? I'm just curious because it's in there, which means now you can open up a campground in the township. And if so, where's the township have plans for this in the future? Again, the word shall's been removed in many, many locations. It sounds less restrictive. The changes are sounding like they're made for the benefit of a developer coming in here and not for the benefit of the township residents that pay the taxes. D.R. Horton, their revised plans were submitted on July 31st. Do they comply with the old style ordinance, or do they comply with the new one that's going to be hopefully not signed next week? We need to know this. Were they given an insight and said, hey, here's the new wording, so now quick, do your plans? That is a little scary. The board may impose conditions. No, shall impose conditions. You want a special exception, then you're going to pay us something. They can't be given, carte blanche. Giving something or stating that on their plans, unbuildable green space. Last but not least, I've seen this in many municipalities, builders be required to submit 11 by 14 plans when they come in. So when we come in, we can look at the plans, we can see them. In the future, I'd like to request sections proposed are, like I said, copy and paste so that we can see, okay, this is the wording before, this is the wording now, yes, it's okay, no, it's not. So the residents can see exactly what's changing. Because we're the ones with the taxes, and if they're going to get special exceptions, if they're going to get, you don't need to do this, now, like you said with the sewer system, now we're going to have to pay more. It's going to fall on us.
Yes.
I had traffic count outside of my house for 24 hours, which complies with the code. Do they then times it by 30 for a month? Whatever.
They did it during the summer too, by the way.
Oh, did
before
they?
school started.
Oh, I didn't, okay, I didn't see that. Oh, yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
Before the buses are coming up and everything. And with regards to police, there was another major accident
Yes.
at Turkey Hill. I've heard basically the condition of the gentleman, which is definitely not good. Now, their sign, when you come out that road, they do have to pull out because that sign blocks the traffic coming down. So I don't know, maybe they're gonna want a bigger property with all these homes, or they're gonna need more gas stations, but, I mean,
And we make those efforts to remind people, share the road. But it still happens over the weekend. I saw a potential accident where I'm on an entrance ramp going onto a highway, and the truck in front of me did not see the motorcycle I could plainly see, and it pulled right out, and the guy almost fell over the front of his motorcycle. I mean, I don't know why people can't see that. And we did have a few weeks ago on Morgantown Road where motorcycles skidded off the road, off the bike, wearing a t-shirt. His back was all torn up. Fortunately, he had a helmet, so that's where the motorcycle safety, we can always just keep reminding people of that.
That area needs to be looked at by DOT because it's right where people are coming into the turning lane to turn into Turkey Hill. Right as you're trying to turn left on the cupola. It's a
well, since
disaster.
I've been there, there's a guy that lost his arm, they went onto Gable's property. Like I said, I've had a car up on my rock wall, I've had a car overturned in my ditch. But I asked that the ordinance, take out the word shall, take out the word may, put shall back in, require the developers to do something to benefit us,
Thank you.
because they don't care.
Thank you. Thank you, beyond two commissioners. I'd like to refer to a different topic, and that has to do with our rules of conduct.
Yes.
I'm going to ask that moving forward, we abide by our rules of conduct.
Yeah.
I feel that we've come to a point where the disorderly, the offensiveness, the threatening speeches, the boisterous, the unruly language is preventing us to move forward. I know, according to these rules, we need to direct everything to you, John. And, you know, as members of the board, I don't like the fact that we get people up here that have offensive things being thrown at them. And we do a lot of criticism by people sometimes to members of the board.
Yes.
I feel it is very disruptive, it is very disrespectful, and I think it's time to stop. There, number 4E, I believe it is here, says that after being, in other words, after you have been told about it, which has happened here already, you can be requested to leave. And I feel we are at that point. So I'm not going to go any further with this. I'm just going to say I am asking that we start to follow the rules of conduct. Thank you.
I appreciate this.
We had rules of conduct a few years ago, and they were removed, so I requested the board to bring them back. So,
I
thank
think
you
we
for
should
the comment.
follow rules of conduct in person, and maybe also follow rules of conduct a little bit online and realize, you know, the constant insinuations that we're, telling the developer what we're gonna change the rules to, so maybe you can submit something quickly. That's not really appreciated.
All right, let's get to this point. We're winding down, it's 9 o'clock. Any other questions from our residents before we close? Do we have anybody on Zoom that has some comments to add before we close?
You only have one person, you know, you're not going to be.
All right, then. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight.
Yeah, that's what I'm, yeah.
I'm not sure.